Welcome to another video about forte pianos by Johann August Tischner. This particular video is about his biography. So ideally, if you want to know everything about the life of a certain person, you would wish that somebody already did research and wrote a book. Unfortunately, concerning Johann August Tischner, such a book doesn't exist yet. Therefore, I have collected all information from sources available to me, and in this video I have compiled an overview. In order to review the biography information about Johann August Tischner, I would first like to give you an overview about the sources where I could find the up-to-date information about this piano maker. I first checked Wikipedia and found an article about Johann August Tischner. Unfortunately, this article is only available in German. I accessed this site in March 2020. The Erich Amberger database has an entry 47395 about Tischner. This is a resource of the German Leibniz Institute for East and Southeast Europe Research. The current state of musical art in Russia is an article found in the New Journal of Music, Neue Zeitschrift für Musik, published in November 1896. Anne Swartz, who is a professor for music at the Burrish College and Graduate Center of the City University of New York, has published a book in 2014 called Piano Makers in Russia in the 19th Century. The First Piano Factory in Russia, New Discoveries, is a Russian article published by Maxim Sergeev in Society and Civilization in the year 2015. Schott, Tsvetkova and Galembo have published an article about Tischner in Grove Music Online in the year 2016. The article by Schott cites a single bibliography item, which is a book by Piotr Pietrovich Zimin called The History of the Piano and Its Predecessors, published in Moscow in Muzika, 1968. Svetlana Korepanova published a PhD thesis in 2005 in Russian called Exhibition Activity in Russia in the 19th Century. This is about the so-called All-Russian exhibitions. Let's start with the main dates and consulting the Erich Amberger database. Johann August Tischner was a male German born in Zeisdorf in Saxonia in Germany on the 18th of August 1774. I might remark that Zeisdorf is now in Sachsen-Anhalt in Germany and is a very tiny village. Records show that he died in St. Petersburg in Russia on the 26th of July 1852. He was buried on the Smolensk cemetery. His religion was Lutheran Protestant. His wife, Katerina Johanna probably, Tes, also written Tus, was born on the 17th of August 1792, so that means she was 18 years younger than him, and she died on the 23rd of May 1833 in St. Petersburg. There was a wedding in 1819. Johann August Tischner is shown in the records with his profession as a musical instrument maker and a merchant. I took the liberty to translate the German Wikipedia content. Johann August Tischner ran one of the first piano factories in St. Petersburg between 1800 and 1852, which is the date of his death. His most famous customer was Michael Glinka, and his pianos were usually inscribed A. Tischner. Tischner came to St. Petersburg from Zeisdorf in Saxony in 1800. There he was promoted by Alexander Czerlitsky, who was an organist at the Lutheran St. Catherine Church. The piano virtuoso and teacher Charles Mayer gave Tischner orders to build pianos. One of Mayer's piano students was the later most important Russian composer of the 19th century, Michail Glinka, who began his career on Tischner pianos. From the small workshop to the first mention of his factory, 18 years passed, and in 1819 there was an advertisement in the St. Petersburg newspaper. Archival documents show that he had already joined the first St. Petersburg Guild of Craftsmen and Merchants in 1811. The guild regulated taxes and helped with patent rights. Let me remark that the two red question marks here are information I found on Wikipedia without any proper citation. Wikipedia further writes that when his factory buildings burned down in 1825, the 50th piano had just been completed. Now let's keep that in mind. We will see later that this statement is probably not correct. At the first public exhibition of Russian manufactured goods in St. Petersburg in 1829, Tischner received the Grand Silver Medal for a piano. Counterfeiters took advantage of this and sold low-quality pianos from Kiev under the name A. Tischner. Tischner published a statement that bad counterfeits of his pianos had been circulated in a St. Petersburg journal article. To date, Tischner at St. Petersburg has been considered the best worker in his field. In recent times, unfortunately, we have seen several instruments for Riga acquired in quick succession, with neither corresponded to the former reputation of fine workshops nor the enormous prices, 1,500 rubles on average. Like Konrad Graf, he would do well to have a skillful man travel around who would remedy the shortcomings that had arisen recently and thus the sinking of his well-founded reputation. Wikipedia further states that competitors such as Karl Wirth or Hermann Lichtenthal reduced the demand for Tischner grand pianos despite an ever-expanding market. In 1842 there was a comparative concert by Liszt, who first played on a Tischner grand and then on one from Lichtenthal, which exceeded that of Tischner due to innovations in sonority and volume. Here Wikipedia cites the New Journal for Music, but as we will see, this article is not the proof for a comparative concert. Tischner died in 1852 and was buried in St. Petersburg on the Smolensk Cemetery. He left a son, born in St. Petersburg in 1819. From the PhD thesis of Svetlana Korepanova, I extracted the all-Russian exhibitions during Tischner's life. The very first one happened in 1829 in St. Petersburg, the second one in 1831 in Moscow, 1833 again in St. Petersburg, 1835 in Moscow, followed by exhibitions in Warsaw, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Warsaw and St. Petersburg. During this series of exhibitions, the Russian Empire was exhibiting the most modern achievements in craftsmanship and technology. According to N. Swartz, during the first All-Russian exhibition in 1825, Tischner exhibited pianos together with Schroeder, Ludeke, Schulz and Diederichs. Tischner won the highest prize. Tischner exhibited and won again in 1831, and as we have seen, that exhibition took place in Moscow. Tischner exhibited 1835 and won the highest prize given to a piano maker in Russia, the State Coat of Arms, which is the emblem of the Russian Empire. At the end of the century, the New Journal for Music, Neue Zeitschrift für Musik, reviewed the beginnings of piano manufacture in Russia, stating that Diederichs, Schroeder and Tischner were the first piano factories in Russia. The first among the local piano manufacturers who succeeded in entering into competition with foreign productions was Tischner, whose grand pianos were characterized by their richness of sound as well as their solid yet not too brittle touch. His heyday began in the early 20s and continued until the middle of the third decade. He was particularly sponsored by two of the best piano teachers of the time, both students of John Cramer's, namely Charles Meyer, currently famous abroad as a brilliant virtuoso, and Alexander Czerliński. The statement which I have just quoted from is found on the top left, and I will continue with the red marked areas. At the beginning of the 1930s, Carl Wirth emerged with his, in fact, wonderful grand pianos, which were equally good compared to the ones from Tischner regarding solidity, however, surpassed them regarding elasticity of touch and soft singing tone. It is worth mentioning here that Hermann Lichtenthal only came to St. Petersburg in 1840. He ran a very successful piano manufacturer in Belgium before. Lichtenthal knew Franz Liszt already from former times, and now, as the then emerging star of piano virtuosity arrived at St. Petersburg in 1842, Lichtenthal asked him if he would like to use his, Lichtenthal's, instruments for the concerts arranged there. Those who were lucky enough to know the wonderful, lovely man Franz Liszt a bit better know that if a request was doable, he would have not been able to refuse it. In addition, Liszt knew about his brilliant mastery. He didn't care what kind of touch an instrument had. He only needed to put one passage, maximum two, on the keyboard as a test, often only with the left hand alone. And immediately even an awful piano was under his control. Also in the following year, 1843, Liszt played in his concerts here and in Moscow on Lichtenthal instruments. So, in New Journal for Music, it is not mentioned that Liszt played a Tischner and then a Lichtenthal piano in 1842. Anne Swartz in her book tells us that in summer 1842, Franz Liszt presented one of his earliest solo recitals in Russia. And it is reported in the official Journal de Saint Petersburg in August 1842 that Liszt endorsed a Russian manufactured piano. Foreign manufactured pianos were brought here at great expense, even though one of the best manufacturers in Europe is close by. This is probably mentioning that Lichtenthal just joined from Belgium to Russia in St. Petersburg in 1840, 2 years ago. At all concerts, the great pianist Liszt played one of Lichtenthal's instruments next to the imported stage piano. We, meaning the public, the audience, we heard each in turn, compared them, and, generally speaking, Lichtenthal's carried the day. Since then, Lichtenthal's workshops have been quite busy, filling orders for the large number of people who want to purchase a piano from his manufacturer. So here again, no mentioning of a comparison of a Tischner grand piano to Lichtenthal, only of Lichtenthal pianos to other imported Western European models. Of course, Lichtenthal knew Liszt before, as we have learned, and he asked him to play his pianos in the public, so he benefited from his popularity. On the other hand, Liszt was very smart, and he knew that the public would love if he prefers a Russian piano over a European piano in public for his concerts. And the statement that after this event everybody wanted to buy Lichtenthal pianos could also in part explain the reported fading interest in Tischner pianos in the 1840s. Piotr Ziemin's book covers the evolution of the piano in the entire world, so only a very few passages relate to Tischner. Tischner's arrival in St. Petersburg, the fact that Glinka owned the Tischner Grand in the years 1824 to 1856, Tischner's publication in the St. Petersburg Gazette in 1819 about fakes of his instruments labeled G.A. Tischner in St. Petersburg, and a general remark about the high quality of Tischner's grand pianos. The article by Schott tells us that Tischner was documented as a master at least since 1812, that the St. Petersburg directories show his business between 1823 and 49 at Demidov Lane, which is today Gritsova Lane, that the historic building still exists and is called House of Tischner. Now I have checked this information and I can say it's correct. It's called Dom Tischnera. The address is correct and I give it here. According to citywalls.ru, the house itself was built in the late 18th century and rebuilt in 1831 to 1832. Schott also tells us that Tischner's son liquidated the firm after Tischner's death. Again, we read that in 1825 the factory burned and was reconstructed thereafter, and it held about 50 almost finished pianos. I would like to compare that to the differing Wikipedia information. Tischner had employed a number of Finnish workers. Tischner grand pianos are remarkably similar to contemporary English grands. Tischner grand pianos are reported to be favored by John Field during his time in Russia. And extant pianos are a C to G4 grand used by Glinka from 1824 to 56, now in the St. Petersburg Museum of Musical Instruments, a grand in the Blue Reception Room of Montplaisir in Peterhof in St. Petersburg, and a grand piano in a private collection in the USA. I can add here that this list of 3 is correct but incomplete. There are more extant Tischner pianos, as we will see in another video in this channel. Pianos are as elegantly finished as Western European ones. Tischner's high reputation inspired fraudulent imitations, prompting him to publish a public warning in 1819. At the 1829 exhibition, Tischner won a great silver medal for his piano, and the judge wrote, "The grand by Tischner should be put in the first rank. The instrument is excellent." Tischner is said to have received an imperial patent from the Tsar. Now I would like to add some information which I found on the St. Petersburg Encyclopedia about these all-Russian exhibitions and the imperial patent. The right to put the state emblem on wares, documents and advertising material was the highest award a participant of an industrial exhibition could receive. The article from Sergeev from 2015 addresses the question, who ran the first piano factory in the Russian Empire? The historian Tsimin, in his publication from 1934 and in his later book from 1868, states that Diederichs became the first piano manufacturer in 1810. This statement was repeated by others. However, in the Russian Empire, there was a legal difference between a workshop with less than 16 people and a larger factory or manufactory. Diederichs now ran a workshop, not a registered factory. In the beginning in 1810, it is known that he as the master worked together only with one additional worker. However, very quickly his workshop expanded and it had a maximum of 30 workers. Also, Diederichs didn't have the Russian citizenship, he was German. Sergeev now reviews a few other candidates to be considered first piano manufacturers in the Russian Empire. About Tischner, Sergeev tells us that he became a Russian citizen on April 17, 1811. In the same year, he became a merchant of the first guild and received the right to open a factory. In 1816, Tischner was initiated as a member of the Masonic Lodge, and after 2 years, in 1818, prompted the 2nd and 3rd degree. The name Johann August Tischner appeared in print in 1818 to 19 when he published a warning in the St. Petersburg Gazette about fakes of his pianos. The published ad contains all the regalia of the master and information that he was a piano master and merchant and information about his factory. Tischner's production was pretty big, so as the fire of 1825 destroyed 50 almost finished pianos. Now let me bring together two facts here. We see that by 1819, Tischner was so famous that he needed to publish a warning in the Gazette about fakes of his instrument. And in 25, his workshop burned, and the Wikipedia article says by that time he just finished his 50th piano. For a well-known piano factory in St. Petersburg, which was already quite famous in 1819, it is not believable that by 1825 he only manufactured 50 pianos. It is more likely that Tischner worked in his factory on 50 pianos in parallel. Sergeev also tells us that in shape, function and even appearance, Tischner's grand pianos are reminiscent of the pianos of the English factory Broadwood and Sons. Like Broadwood pianos, Tischner pianos became very popular in the first half of the 19th century. They were used in concert halls of St. Petersburg, in particular in the old Philharmonic Engelhardt Hall. However, by the end of the 1820s, the public began to notice that the pianos of Tischner, although good, are too weak for large halls, and high notes are almost inaudible and shallow. Initially, Sergeev says, Tischner did not pay attention to this criticism. However, in 1829, although he received the Great Silver Medal for his piano, it was slightly criticized due to a shallow upper register missing richness and brightness. Sergeev continues that there is no doubt that after this event, Tischner improved his pianos, and in an art exhibition in 1831, 2 years later, in Moscow, he was re-awarded the Great Silver Medal. After the exhibition in 1835, he received the right to put the state emblem, the Imperial Crest, on his products. The problems in the upper register of the Tischner piano, noted by the judge in 1829, could have been a single opinion or in the taste of the general evolution of the piano asking for a larger brilliant sound in large concert halls. The fact that he won a silver medal in 29 and 31 just shows that his pianos are excellent. And I might also point back to the Schott article stating that in 1829 the judge, maybe another judge, wrote that the Tischner grand piano is excellent and should be put in the first rank. Sergeev tells us that Tischner's pianos were not only famous in the capital cities of Russia, but also in Viborg and Helsinki in the Grand Duchy of Finland. In the 1840s, Tischner lost fame and pianos by Wirth, Lichtenthal and Becker became more popular. This is all the information I could find about the life of Johann August Tischner. I would like to put it on a timeline sorted by life events. We have learned that he was born in 1774 in Germany. It is mentioned that by 1800 he came to St. Petersburg. He became Russian citizen in 1811 and joined the Guild. At least starting from 1812 he was documented as a master. He joined the Masonic Lodge in 1816. In 1819 there was a wedding and his son was born, which might be a reason for a wedding. Also in 1819, Tischner was already so famous that he needed to publish a warning about fakes of his pianos. Records show that he was working in a factory in the Demidov lane, at least from 1823. We know that Glinka owns a Tischner piano since 1824, and actually that piano still exists. It's in St. Petersburg on exhibition. And on the lid you see an inscription, this piano belonged to Glinka from 1824 to 1856. Sad news, in 1825 his factory burns, and we are finding the statement here that 50 almost finished pianos are burned in that factory. The factory is rebuilt, and in 1829 on the first all-Russian exhibition he wins the Great Silver Medal for his piano. And we have one report from the judge saying it's excellent and another report from another judge saying there are problems in the upper register. In 1831, which is the next all-Russian exhibition taking part in Moscow, he again wins the Great Silver Medal. In 1833, his wife dies. I might remark that in 1833 there was the third all-Russian exhibition, again in St. Petersburg. We don't find any documents that Tischner was taking part or even won a prize. A reason why he might have not even taken part is that his wife was sick or just died. However, on the fourth all-Russian exhibition in Moscow, he received the patent from the Tsar to put that imperial crest on his pianos. This year will become very interesting when we are inspecting extant Tischner pianos. Some of these pianos don't have the imperial crest on them, and others have. And in my opinion, all these pianos must have been built after 1835. In 1842, famous Franz Liszt comes the first time to Russia and prefers Lichtenthal pianos in his public concerts. We also note that from the 1840s, the fame of Tischner pianos is decreasing, and Tischner then finally dies in 1852. In the colorful 19th century, where we can read in the newspaper that the public applauded to piano virtuosos that demanded the maximum from the instruments, and the piano builders improving constantly on their instruments. We hear about factories burning and about winning grand silver medals on all Russian exhibitions. I hope you found this video interesting, and please let me know if you find any mistakes, or even better, if you have more details to share with me and the public about the life and biography of Johann August Tischner. Please let me know.